Hello everyone, I'm Rashmi Bhandary. Today I've got my student Gaurav. Gaurav is from the IS branch and he's cleared applied materials. Okay, so congratulations Gaurav.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. So Gaurav, can you tell us about the role and the designation?
Okay, yeah. So applied materials basically they're into more into manufacturing, thermals, and also software. So they have their software team called as Common System Software. So I work for the Common System Software team. So I have my role as a software engineer in applied materials. So applied materials, when you listen to the company's name, it's more like manufacturing. So they are into manufacturing, but they're into manufacturing of your chips, or you've seen your phones work on Apple or Samsung, anything. Any phone works on chips or SoCs. So in order to manufacture these SoCs, you basically create a wafer. So in order to manufacture this wafer, you need equipments. So these large equipments, complicated equipments, are manufactured by applied materials. So many don't know the depth of what happens when you manufacture a chipset. So applied material is one big company. They're the number one semiconductor and display manufacturing equipment company. So you need to know that there are manufacturers and foundries. So when you hear about TSMC or Global Foundries, so how they manufacture chips is basically using applied materials equipments.
Mm-hmm.
So these machines are like in a 20 by 20 room. They are so big, and each of these machines are small. Even the small machineries or equipments cost around $5 to $10 million.
Mm-hmm.
So it's necessary that you look into every company because even a manufacturing company has their software end. So yeah, that is one thing. And applied materials, I'll begin with how I got into applied.
But very few. I mean, you are the only one who applied for this.
There are few, like I think 3 or 4 from a college applied.
Yes.
I think they missed a really good opportunity, and I was the only one who got selected from my college.
Okay. So anyway, so can you tell us about the rounds,
Okay.
First is not to miss any of the placement mails or whatever we send, because many times good opportunities are there and you actually can miss out. Yeah.
Okay. So first they have their own partnership with, there's an application called as Glider. So they work with Glider and CoCubes together. So Glider is actually very much into your privacy, or they look into that you can't cheat at all.
Okay.
So both your phone, your laptop need to be connected to Glider. Even your phone,
okay,
it needs to be on to the entire test. So first it was basically the MCQs. So one thing you need to know is since we are from the COVID batch, most of us missed out in the operating system or networking concepts. So those two are the main concepts every company has. So applied materials, even when they tell you to learn something, it is based on operating systems and computer networks. So that is one main thing. Don't miss out on operating system and computer networks, no matter what, and know in depth about everything you talk about. It may be projects, or it may be even your internships. So when you talk about projects,
before that, so you had first online test. So that was what? Aptitude was there, or was it a technical?
First it was aptitude. We had around, I think, 20 to 30 questions on aptitude. Even the aptitude, it's a mixture of both technical and your aptitude questions.
Okay.
Yeah, even in the technical, it's basically OS and computer networks. So you need to know in depth regarding the OS and computer networks. You don't have much time when you're doing this aptitude questions.
Can you remember any of the questions? I mean, so that people can.
Yeah, you need to know about scheduling algorithms. There are scheduling algorithms like first come, first serve, round robins, how these works, and your sorting algorithms, quick sort, how these work. So they give you a scenario on quicksort, like Flipkart have these many arrays or these many items. So if you want to order these items in a particular manner, which kind of sorting technique would you use, and what would be the worst case scenario or the best case scenario? So it's not direct questions. That's why I told you need to know in depth of every concept. And next,
multiple choice.
Yeah, multiple choice, but every choice is way too similar. It's like logarithm of n-1 log of n and n log of n. Okay. So you need to choose between. It's too similar to make a mistake. And then we had like 3 coding questions. So even in coding, there are pattern problems. If you go to Geeks for Geeks or websites like Java Point, you have pattern problems. So pattern problems are basically you need to create a right angle pattern or left or a diamond shape pattern. So pattern problems are really important, and there's some techniques how you solve them. So Geeks for Geeks is a really good place where you can learn pattern problems. So my
How early can a student get into this Geek for Geeks and all that? I mean, from the first year?
Yeah, from the first year itself, because Geeks for Geeks provides you with everything, even last minute notes, even from the beginning basics till the last minute
even
notes.
your college notes?
No, it's basically preparing you for technical rounds or your interviews and stuff.
So naturally, if you know this, you can clear your exams, VTO exams.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So yeah, Geek for Geeks provides you with the in-depth concepts also. So if you go through Geeks for Geeks, you can easily clear your exams also. So first question was basically on the pattern problem. So they gave an array of where they've written applied materials. So you need to create a right angled pattern where the first letter is A, then you have the letter B, two letter P's, and then you have L, I, E, D, and the next four letters. So you need to create that triangle. That was the first problem. And since I went through Geeks for Geeks and learned new pattern problems, it was easier for me to solve the first question. Then the second question was basically on your sum and array or aggregate functions. So there are edge cases when it comes to these aggregate functions. So when you look at the problem, it's much easier when you look at the output. You seem like, oh, I can solve this in few minutes. That's not the case when it comes to companies like Applied Materials. So they want you to have a faster approach, and they provide you with the space and time complexity. So space and time complexity is basically where it requires the less time and takes less memory. So if I could have solved the problem using 2 or 3 arrays, that would have increased the space complexity, and I wouldn't have cleared the technical rounds. So it is necessary that you keep in mind that you check the space and time complexity also, because most of the candidates, what they think is, I've solved the problem, I've not cleared it. So you get the problem, but the space complexity is way higher and your test cases will be a failure. So that is one thing to keep in mind. And the third problem was basically on logarithms and power functions. So Applied Materials, one thing is they don't allow you to write in Python. So it is easier to code in Python and get the results. So they want you to code in C, C++ and Java, mostly object-oriented function programs or functional approach programs.
So actually C and C++ is actually mandatory, right, for anyone to clear?
So yeah, C is a basic one which they teach you in first year. So many of them just look into C, then they directly jump into Python or C++. It is necessary that you know in depth of C. So if you know C, then it's easier to jump between languages also. So
but that they should not, no one should miss on that.
Yeah, no one should miss on C, because C is the base for all your networking, or let's say operating system. C is the base for that, to understand these concepts. So then they asked me to code in C++ or C or Java. So I went with C. It's faster, but it's difficult to code in C. It's not as easy as Python when it comes to your libraries and all. So you shouldn't use any library function. You have to write your own power function. Then you have to call the logarithm function, and you have to find out they'll give you 2 numbers. One number is has a lower value than the first one. So you need to check if the lower valued number is inside the higher valued number. So let's just say I have a number called as 1, 2, 3, 4, and they'll give me the secondary number as 3, 4. We need to find whether this number 3 and 4 is inside the 1, 2, 3, 4. So in this case it is there, so I have to return true. So that was the problem, but the thing is, you are not allowed to use any library functions. If I use a library function, it's a 5-minute problem, but since I didn't use a library function, it goes from 5 to 30 minutes just in that this thing. So you need to know how to solve these analytical questions in depth. So avoid using library functions in your beginning when you're in first or second year. Try solving more and more into hacker ranks or hacker or lead code problems. So it will be easier for you, and also look into pattern problems like Geeks for Geeks, Java Point, things like that. So yeah, that was the coding round. Then yeah, I got selected in the coding round. Then it was HR and technical and HR rounds. So in the technical round, I had 2 technical interviewers. Both of them were 16 plus experience in applied materials. So you cannot bluff about any of the technical concept. You need to know in depth. So basically they go through your operating system concept like scheduling algorithms, deadlocks, or your multi-threading concepts. How do you approach multi-threading concept? What happens when you approach a deadlock, your banker's algorithm, or first come first serve, round robin, how this works, in depth about regarding these algorithms. Everything is there in Geeks for Geeks. So Geeks for Geeks is the one place where you can, I think, go through everything.
Alright. And just a pro tip, the more senior the person is, usually the interview is much more better because they do give the benefit of the doubt. Okay, so usually, I'm not saying you can't have a broad thing for everyone. With more maturity, they give more, they're okay with you making a little bit more mistake. That extra thing you get, okay. Sometimes youngsters don't have that sort of a patience. Yeah.
So even if you can't answer the question directly, he'll require you to tell you at least the approach.
Yeah.
So he started with C++ concepts like what is C++, how do you approach, why is it better than C, what's the difference between C++ and Java. So you need to know all those differences. Then you need to know about STL functions in C++ and why do you, like, they basically use C++ and C sharp. So I didn't know C sharp at the beginning. When I applied, they actually asked whether you know C sharp or not. So I told no. I thought I'll lose the job offer, but since I knew C++, I got into it. And also the thing is, you should not lie when you're applying. Don't tell the things that you don't know. Even in your resume, don't write the things that you don't know, because when it's a senior manager or a senior developer, they'll go in depth regarding that. So these questions are basically follow-up questions. So when I answered about C++, he asked me about OOPS concept in C++. When I answered about the OOPS concept, 4 pillars. In the 4 pillars, there were polymorphism, what kind of polymorphism, what kind of inheritance, runtime polymorphism, compile time polymorphism. They go in depth. So you need to know like not just the surface level, but the depth concepts also. Then he asked basically went through Glider's coding this thing approach. So he sent me a link for Glider, and there was a 1-page problem statement where I had to read through the problem statement. So first he told me to tell me the approach. So if I can't code the problem, I had to at least tell the approach. So the edge case was space and time complexity, as I mentioned earlier. So you need to keep in mind the space and time complexity whenever you're coding or whenever you're learning, even in lead code and HackerRank. So the question was, you have your arrays, a large number of 30 array, and in those arrays you have your COVID cases. Each array contains a COVID case, each space. So what you have to do is you have to calculate which date in that array has the least number of COVID cases and which date has the maximum number of COVID cases. So you also need to understand how to get those dates. So they didn't mention any dates or the date function, anything. So since I typed it in C, so the dates are basically your index values in arrays. So you also need to understand that and tell him the approach, how I go through the approach. And one more thing is trace the problems. So he was really happy since I traced the problems. I traced the entire code, what I've written, and it was easier to solve when you trace the problem. So whenever you code for any competitive coding exams or interview or any company, you need to trace the problems, because since there are edge cases in every coding question, when you trace the problem, you will understand these edge cases and you can easily solve those edge cases. I traced the entire problem and I could come up with the solution pretty quick. So he was happy with the solution. Then that was it. Since that one coding question took around, I think the interview took around 1 hour 40 minutes. So that coding question was the key. Since I traced the problem, he was really happy with that, since I knew the concepts in depth. Then we had the HR round. So it's necessary when it comes to the HR round, don't give diplomatic answers. They know you give diplomatic answers, but don't do that. I actually was answering in a diplomatic way. She actually told me, like, we know as a HR, they know these answers, that what a participant gives. So you need to tell them the truth, like what you know, actually, what you actually did. So the one main question she asked was, why did you do engineering? So it's necessary that you tell them the truth. Don't give them diplomatic answers like, I'm really into computers, that I got, that's why I'm really interested into computer science and engineering. No, she actually asked me that. She actually told me that doesn't actually answer the question if you answer like that. So it's necessary that you tell why from the beginning. How did you get into engineering?
So why engineering?
So my answer was since most of my cousins are engineers, so I took them as my role model. So from the beginning itself, from a really young age, I used to sit with them, work, how they used to work, what they used to do. That created a spark in me for engineering. So I started following in their steps itself. So that brought me into Sahyadri, that brought me into engineering, I would say. So she was really happy with that answer, since basically everyone would answer they got into computers, then they got into engineering.
Yeah.
So you need to mention how you got into engineering, and you have a question. And one more thing is, you need to ask questions. So when they ask at the end of the interview, when they ask if you have any question, don't say you don't have any questions. That is one big minus point when it comes to interviewers. So even in technical, I think even the question answer round went up to 40 minutes. So I asked him around 10 to 20 questions.
You asked?
Yeah, I asked him around 10 to 20 questions regarding the company, regarding what they work. So even in chipset, there is something called quantum tunneling when it comes to your drain and your transistors. Question regarding that, how they manufacture, what's the difference when they manufacture, what is the nanometer, you basically have nanometers in chipsets, 3 nanometer, 4 nanometer, challenges in manufacturing 3 nanometer chipsets. So all these questions, he was really happy with those questions. So you need to ask more and more questions, more and more. So it's necessary that you know about the company, what they do in depth.
Yeah.
And yeah, that
Yeah, what did you ask for the HR? Did you ask any questions?
Yeah, I actually asked more into what the company is into, like my role as an engineer in the CSS department, as a software engineer, what should I do. So don't go to ask question how the workplace is, because when it's an HR, she'll obviously answer the workplace is great. So that is one minus point. So you need to ask about the company itself with the HR, and don't ask about experiences and all, because the one who interviewed me had 16 plus experience, so that itself would tell you about the workplace. So if you ask about the workplace, then it's a negative about you that you weren't attentive when you were answering the questions. So ask about more about the company, what the company is into, what you would do in the company as a fresher when you join. So that is those are the important questions, and when you are answering HR questions. And don't answer a diplomatic way, give straight answer. If you don't know the answer, just say no. Don't make them wait, because they have a lot of other interviews coming up, and tell the truth when you're in an HR round, because they've seen more candidates than we have answered interviews.
Yeah.
So she had 13 plus years of experience, so it is necessary that you go straight to the point.
Yes. So thank you so much. Any final tip? 2 minutes, because we're running out of time.
Okay, final tip is don't
viewers.
miss on basic concepts like operating system and computer networks. Also, right from your first year, it's easier for you if you go into operating system and computer networks basics right from your first year. And also look into your languages more. So don't skip on languages, like don't learn too many multiple languages and not know any of those basics of those languages. Stick to one language. Let's say you stick to C, it's fine if you stick to C. And if you stick to C++, it's fine if you stick to C++ and know the concepts in depth, because a lot of companies they look into the languages in depth. It's not that you know only the surface level concepts as such. So don't jump into conclusions or don't jump into languages as such. Stick to one language, know the concept in depth. That's it.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you so much. And I hope this was helpful, and it's bye from both of us till we meet again.